So please welcome to Bravewords, Streaming for Vengeance. I don't even know, like, aside from legendary, DJ, there's like a number of things on your resume. Mr. Neal Kay, this is quite the honor. We're talking about, well, among a million other things, this monster. Oh, I can barely lift it. It's such a monster tome.
Yeah, actually, it didn't start out that way, but I mean, the whole process was a bit bizarre for me, Tim. Oh, and all your watchers and listeners out there. See, that book covers my whole life pretty much. And as you yourself now know, I've been involved in entertainment for over 55 years, not just the metal era. Um, and the fact is that for 3 months, I mean, 2.5 years ago, Stjepan, he approached me about the idea of doing a biography because for him, I was the last in line, the missing link in the Maiden story. But I told him that we couldn't, if I agreed to do it, we couldn't call it that because most people realize the missing link is between Homo sapien and bloody monkey. And I ain't going there. And I'm afraid that is one funny one too far for me. Oh, I've just got a message come in. Facebook, Stjepan Juras, I can go now. I mean, I think he means he can get on now.
I will let him into the meeting.
I've just we better send him a quickie just to say, okay, see you there. Oh,
it's fun.
Dear.
This is rock and roll, right? Come on.
Well, that's right. That doesn't matter. He'll just get in. So look, I always, like people to understand, when they meet me for the first time, it took 3 months to persuade me to do the book. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it because the honest thing is I didn't feel worthy enough. And that is the truth. DJs don't have biographies written about them. Rock stars and musicians do. He's joined us now. I can see him. I hope you can.
And so anyway, welcome to Streaming for Vengeance, Mr. Stjepan Juras. How you doing, sir?
He's not connected to the audio yet, apparently. It says here.
There we go.
But why? I'm still having a problem with sound over there in Croatia. Ladies and gentlemen, service from Croatia unfortunately has been interrupted by tonight because of atmospheric condition, and the good man above, who happens to be, I have rumored, a heavy metal fan, is working very hard on the event to get.
Maybe it was an axe. Maybe it was an axe.
Yeah, maybe it was. Anyway, so I didn't really want to do a book because I didn't think that I was worthy enough. I never see myself as the way people see me today. I really don't. And in actual fact, I've maintained a reasonable friendship with Steve Harris through the years. After all, I knew the band before they were anything. We were friends,
Yeah.
So I actually spoke with Steve on the phone about it. And I said, look, Steve, you know me better than anyone, really. And we went down the road together. We fought a good war. We did to establish your band and what I wanted to, help everyone with. So what do you think? Should I do the book or not? And Steve said, well, actually, you should do it because you didn't just help us. You helped a lot of people, actually, and your story is very worthy. So I, grudgingly, with my wife nagging the hell out of me to do it, I agreed to do it with Stjepan. This is the first official biography that he's ever written. He's done loads of books on Maiden, the band, the music, the people, the whole thing, but none of them are official. And I decided that if we were going to do a book about me, then in order for everyone to understand where I come from, which is a very different space in time for a start, I wanted people to know about my life, how I came to be in rock and roll, what things affected me, what life was like for me growing up, all the influences and things. So Stjepan and I agreed to do one right the way back to, well, the 1950s. And that's why it became a trophy book.
And obviously, well, like from the get-go, there's a lot of people that actually want to write a book. There's a lot of people that shouldn't write a book, and there's the odd one that you want to read, right?
Well, I hope
you get along with the person, if because most prolific people like yourself, it's I'm not saying you can't do it by yourself, but it's too hard to do by yourself anyways, right? So you need to find a partner.
It's not only that, Tim. Look, I'm 74 years old nearly now. I've done, as you now know, a huge amount in my life. Almost seems impossible at times that one person did all that. And I have, like most old folk these days, memory problems. I mean, how am I expected to remember over, 60, 65 years worth of stuff and just bring it back to life? Funnily enough, the earliest stuff was easier because I was born, as you know, just 4.5 years after the end of the Second World War. It was a different planet back then, never mind about a different life. And I grew up, I've remembered a lot of it, and it's in the book. But the things that I got involved with in, entertainment all over the place, there's so much of it. It's been very hard to remember. And I wanted to be as truthful as I could be about all the music stuff. I never lie about anything to do with music. In the course of my life, I've had a lot of, young bands, musicians come to me about what I think of their music, and, they give me demo tapes and stuff. And I never, ever, ever lie about what I hear and what I find, because to give somebody false hope is the harbinger of utter disaster. You shouldn't do it. You've got to tell the truth, and then they must know and understand it. I've had a curious life. In a way, it's a bit like Bruce. I'm also the product of a British public school. I was incredibly well educated. Not that I liked it, as you found out. As I said in the book, if my headmaster had grown a marrow, I'd piss on it, just like Bruce did on his. I would. I didn't want to be there. My parents made me go there. I guess I was bright enough to get the exams. I'm nobody's fool, but the planning and the work, all this is work to me. It's a business. Follow the money, get the business sorted. Establishing the bandwagon, the sound house, and everything else I've done it from a business standpoint. The DJ thing, that was the easiest part of it, really. I know that I had a broadcast voice. God was kind. And he wasn't as well, because I wanted to be a musician. And all I can do is play a few chords on a piano. But maybe the aspect of not being a musician, but wearing a DJ's head in rock, if you like, and also being, for God knows how many last years, a producer, arranger, an orchestrator, has allowed me to sit between bands or musicians and the public, and using my different heads, know instinctively what's going to be a floor puller, what's going to work, and what ain't. Because musicians, they have a different take on their music. Not all of them understand the business of the connection to the audience. They write a song, and if it's technically great, to them, it's a great song. That's how they judge. A lot of them do. Not all, but a lot. And they lose sight of the fact that the bit that makes it appealing to the audience actually could be the chord progression, the melody, the vocal melody, it's this sort of thing. But they don't see that. If somebody plays an intricate piece on a song and the band respond as well, it's a fantastic piece. Therefore, that's a great song. No, it's not. It's not. It's introspective, and it's for musos. What makes a song great is its appeal to the masses. Then you've got a big one on your hands.
Well, let's go back to that.
Hi, Stjepan, are you with us now?
Yeah. Hi.
Oh,
excellent.
Finally.
Excellent. Stjepan Juras, welcome to Streaming for Vengeance. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
joining
you.
us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's keep working on this whole DJ thing because like what was like your first music heard? What was your first music bought? And what was your first music played as a DJ? Because there's a lot of us kids, a lot of people that grew up just loving music and loving the DJs and maybe wanting to be a DJ, but as you just said about the voice, it's like, well, I could never be a DJ. My voice sucks, or what I don't want that personality.
It it's more than that. Let's just put it down to the basic root of the thing. I'm different from the majority in one special way. It's my family. It's in the book too. My mother's father was a vaudeville entertainer in the 1920s. My mother and one of her brothers had a swing band in the 1940s until he got called up into the British Royal Air Force. Um, that whole side of the family are from entertainment, and I consider myself an entertainer. Both my cousins are or have been in entertainment, one in films, one is a member of the International Magic Circle. We are all entertainers. You know, the film Singing in the Rain, there's a scene in that with Donald O'Connor and a song called Make 'em Laugh. And in the scene, he dances around a room with a dummy. And that is the most spectacular and fun thing that brings home the very point that I make. It's one thing to be a DJ and know the music and know what to play next, but I'm an entertainer and it's different. I have a different way of doing things and a different sense of humor. And because of my family history, I believe in the excellence of the art form of entertainment completely professionally. And I think that, the duty is to the public always. And if you're not good enough, don't stand on a stage. Back then, when my, grandfather was in vaudeville or music hall, as we called it, if you were no good, a long pole with a hook on the end would be extended from the wings of the stage and they pull you off. They did. There's no question. I mean, I know my history of theatre and silver screen Hollywood very well. My mother made sure of it, actually. So I have all this in my head as well. And I have a very strong relationship to times gone by in music. I'm very interested in the mechanics of music because I've produced and arranged albums and stuff. Well, it's all, classic rock based one way or the other. And I was interested to learn all about it. Not being a musician, it was a little bit hard for me, but I had to learn how to do some things. So I come from a showbiz family of sorts, if you want. Um, Davy, my grandpa, was a song and dance man, but he was known to crack a few funnies too, which is reasonable enough. And I have a way of, working and just talking to people and get a laugh out of it. But I don't tell jokes and silly things like that. I like doing it with music. And the sound house was a good place for lunacy. Madness was the key factor.
No, I have to ask you a question because I've been reading a couple of prolific books, Geezer Butler's latest one, Keith Richards, and how important the pirate radio stations and Radio Luxembourg was when the BBC wouldn't play a lot of the music that was coming out of the States.
Wouldn't play
anything with an edge, right?
Yeah, not just that. All right, okay. Now look, the first time I started DJing, well, not professionally, but DJing, I was about 14 years old, and it was a youth club DJ thing. We were in the early to mid 60s here, 1964, and I had all the pop explosion of the 60s to play at the youth club discotheque. I built the youth club's first discotheque and was on stage myself for it. And I mean, I had, old Rolling, well, old, I mean, they were all new then. We had Rolling Stones, Beatles, Hollies, all that stuff, all that generation. But I also had a very strong connection to the first generation of rock and rollers because some of them, they're my heroes. They're the ones who broke with, the normality of music in the day. For example, Alan Freed. the New York radio DJ who coined the term rock and roll. You know, he did. They took him off air. They impounded the live concert ticket money. In the end, he died a broken man. But he gave the world the phrase rock and roll. Right. In addition to that, the great originals are the ones that we have to thank for what we have, you know, going on today. You know, that's like Little Richard, Buddy Holly, these sort of people. Chuck Berry, very important man, and Jerry Lee Lewis, not Elvis Presley. Don't go with that at all. He is a product of Tom Parker. He may have been somewhat of a country performer, and he could wiggle his legs around, but the real invention comes from the originality of those artists themselves, not being told what to do and how to do it. You know, no one could tell Buddy Holly what to do. They tried, and it was futile. He knew what he wanted. You know, like Steve Harris always knew what he wanted. You can't tell these people. These are the real originators. And I have a very, very strong, you know, belief in them and what they did, because they were the ones who had to take on the normality of society of the times. You know, they were branded devil worshippers and God knows what for the belief they had in rock and roll. And we owe them everything without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah, we do.
Can I bring Stjepan into this conversation? Yeah. Because what drew you to Neal to do this book? Like, let's bring you into this thing.
What to say? Neal personally thinks he was the right person in the right time, and he developed a whole heavy metal scene, but he was so humble, so I can't say shy, because Neal is not shy. Neal is everything but not shy, but he's humble, and he don't believe that he deserves something like that, book about him. But I think personally Neal is a legend, and among not only Iron Maiden fans, among all fans of heavy metal, especially new wave or the British heavy metal, Neal is some kind of cult, because Neal's like Neal shine like a bright star in the 70s, 80s, and after that he went to Portugal, and later he disappears from scene, and people didn't know where Neal is, what he is doing, and but this caused a lot more of legendarity of Neal, if you understand what I want to say. And it was my obligation to me, to my feelings, to contact Neal and try to explain him why he need a book, because in Croatian, one big rock star said to me, "I don't want a book about my life, and only when I die, if someone want to write a book about me, it's okay." But I told her, but look, when you die, someone will try to publish a cheap, fast book about your life and everything, and this is not a story. You have your story in life. Imagine that I write a book of Neal, I don't know, in 20, 30 years, and Neal is not with us anymore. Who will tell me this story? I can just write something that I found on Wikipedia or internet, or from some people. But if I don't speak directly with Neal, this is not right. This is not true. So I try to find him, and I try to push out from him all these stories. Even he was surprised with some answer because he forgot this. But during the interviews, he found some memories somewhere deep in him. So this was my start. I was very surprised that a music journalist in United Kingdom, and I wrote this in my foreword, don't care too much about some kind of legacy. And I question myself, why me from far Croatia was the first person who started this project. And here we are. We have the book, we have the stories. You read the book, you heard the stories. So I think it was worth. It was worth, really worth.
Neal, I have to ask you, when Stjepan orchestrated that whole reunion with Paul and Steve Harris when Iron Maiden came to Croatia, what was going through your heavy metal heart?
I don't share the same sort of feelings that fans do, principally because, again, I've known them all from before they were anything. And then I went and did 2 major tours with them, as Steve says in the foreword that he kindly wrote. I don't, you know, I've not been a part of what's been going on between them after Paul left the band. I personally have never had any problem with Paul Di'Anno in my life. But Steve, from time to time, a long time ago maybe, made me more than aware of what was going on. And I did see the beginnings of things on the road, but it's not my immediate concern. Therefore, I wouldn't have gotten involved. Whether Steve had a reunion with Paul in Croatia or not, it didn't bother me either way. I don't behave like a fan of this band. That's not it at all. It's a lot deeper than that. I'm on the inside looking out. I'm not a fan looking in. And I'm not that way inclined. The only time that has ever happened to me in all the years that I've done with all the names that I've worked with, and I put it in the book, in the 80s, I was, as you now know, invited to take up managership of a studio complex just south of the River Thames in central London for my old friend Jim White, who was the governor of Mountain Records, and he had Nazareth, Hawkwind, the sensational Alex Harvey band on the roster. Mm-hmm. And he'd been touring with Naz, Dan McCafferty, and the others all over America. He came back in the mid-80s and contacted me. He'd known me from my days at the Soundhouse. And he contacted me and asked me if I'd, go down for a meet, offered me a job as manager of this complex, as well as everything else I did. And I worked out a deal with him. I couldn't be there, every day. But I said I'd take it on. And in doing so, coming into rehearsal in the mid-80s for the studio, we're not rock bands, really. They were the mostly hierarchy of the pop world. They couldn't do very much in reality, not all of them. There were acts like Bananarama, Boy George, these sort of people, and all the staff under me were all rockheads. They were all musicians, guitar players, keyboard players, and they all had long hair and they knew exactly what to do. The morning came when, having grown up in the late 50s and 60s, turned up one of my own heroes. I knew he was coming, and I knew he was playing the Albert Hall, but I didn't know that he was coming to us for a pre-production and rehearsal. I walked into number 1 studio that morning and found Art Garfunkel there, and he was one of my heroes. You can't argue with Simon and Garfunkel. They showed the world how it is with vocal harmony.
How to harmonize.
They're just absolutely perfect. And he was playing Bridge Over Troubled Water on a Steinway when I walked in, and I was absolutely taken. And that's the only time, truthfully, I have ever been in a kind of a fan musician reaction. I don't. I've seen so many, known so many, that I don't react that way. my relationship with Maiden is different, but it's very solid. Look, for me, they're probably the greatest metal band for me in the world. I know there's a lot of others. Of course there are. But the fact remains that nobody else has ever had their own 747-400 before. No one else has ever had the lead singer as a group captain in the Royal Air Force before. No one else has ever had an Olympic fencing champion leading the band before. And very few have got the similar lineup they started with over 45 years ago. You know, the main men are still around. And the music just hits me straight away. There was never an argument. As soon as I got the tape home, I knew. I just know. And I've always known about those that will and those that can't and won't. It's a spiritual thing with me. I get goosebumps all over when I'm in the presence of those who either are great or will become great. And since my earliest spiritual days, when I couldn't begin to want to know about it, and my first wife drove me to it, I've learned an awful lot. There's a story in the book you've read about my father in Burma with the Royal Air Force being transferred up country, another airfield with a crew, boarding a DC-3, a Dakota C-47 in a war. Just before he got on board, fell over in a dead faint, had malaria, carted off to the base hospital. I told Steve this story as well. He knows about this now. And he was unconscious, my dad, for 10 days. And when he came to, the commanding officer came to see him, you see, and he asked how he was. And my dad said, well, I want to go and join my crew. Now I'm feeling a bit better, sir. And he said, well, you can't. That plane took off without you, and sometime later flew straight into a mountain in a monsoon, and everyone on board's dead. And if you'd have been on board, you would have been too. Now,
wow.
Now you think about that, because I certainly do. And Dad never told me about that until just a couple of years before he passed. And I told Steve that story because I think it's very relevant. I believe that Maiden were meant to be. The man upstairs likes heavy metal. I know he does. You know, we have many examples of this sort of thing. And if something's meant to be, then nothing's going to stop it. I was told that by mediums anyway. I didn't get a chance. I was made to do everything I did. It was pointed out to me, as you've read, that Steve apparently saved my life in a previous life. Therefore, what I did for them in this life was meant to be. And they were very much meant to be. And when you look back on it, over 40 years at the top of the tree, they have given so much musical pleasure to millions around this world over the years. They are as constant as the North Star, as Shakespeare once said, Julius Caesar, if I may quote that. You know, they are an institution. They're way beyond being a band. They have a worldwide fan base that is unbelievable. And I'm only just meeting some of them. They're incredible. I'm speechless about the things they get up to, what they want to know about. It, you know, I don't even think Steve himself comes to realize exactly what they are. They are astounding.
Well, there's very few bands on the planet, and I'm just growing up since like the late 70s, like listening to this really extreme music. It's extreme for there's certain cultures. I'm not trying to be racist, like third world countries, which, you know what I mean? Madonna's not going to play there, but like the fan base is a Sepultura fan base. It's an Iron Maiden. It's a Metallica. You know what I mean? It's angry youth. So really, bands like Iron Maiden can play almost every country on the planet, and there's a lot of pop bands that can't because they don't relate, or the fans don't relate. You know what I mean?
It's not only that. I mean, you've got to look at different areas for different kinds of music anyway. I mean, I've been to Africa, and I don't mean North Africa and Tangier. You know, I've visited Sierra Leone. I've been to Kenya. Unwittingly, on holiday with my first wife, as is in the book, I actually got roped in with a steel band, and playing in a hotel in St. Lucia as well when I went out to the Caribbean and finished up playing congas on tour with them for a while. I mean, different parts of the world have their different cultures. But the thing that is really significant in metal or rock, I would prefer to use the term hard rock because it covers a wider aspect.
Sure.
It's the sincerity and the down-to-earthness of our own genre, well, from Europe and the United Kingdom. I know the Americans are much given to showmanship in the extreme. You know, Guns N' Roses, all that, you know, the hair culture of the mid to late 80s and onwards with American bands, Motley Crue particularly. You know, I you know, that's their thing. I don't particularly go for that, but I love the music. I will do. You know, I mean, you've got to look. I mean, I've traveled as well. I've been out to Japan. I found a sound house in my honor in the Far East. I mean, the Japanese are crazy anyway. They love rock, and that's all there is to it. I don't think in Central Zulu land they're going to go for heavy metal. That ain't going to work. No way will it. Not a hope in hell, sir. Otherwise, we'll all be back at Rorke's Drift again, where it's rumoured Corporal Steve Harris and Corporal Neal Kay were fighting right there on the battlements at Rorke's Drift. It's in my book. I had this weird dream. And I think that's where Steve saved my life. And the last time I spoke with him, I told him so and said, listen, you, I know this is crazy, but I had this mad dream. I know you did the Trooper, and that was about the Crimean War. Fair enough. But we are, in my dream, on the battlements at Rorke's Drift, and we're facing about 5,000 very angry Zulus. And this is where you saved my life, because we're wearing scarlet jackets, white pith helmets, and we're both corporals, and we're standing next to each other, and the Zulus are charging towards us, right? And at that moment, I've heard that guy in the movie, look out, somebody, pot him, he's going to kill somebody or whatever. And I've turned round, and this great big fat Zulu stands above me with his spear, about to prong me, when Steve swings round and gives him one between the eyes with the Henry Martini single-shot rifle. And in that way, saved my life. So, yeah. And we laughed like mad when I told Steve this dream, which is the weirdest dream. Even Stjepan thinks it's a bit far-fetched, but it's a dream. And it kind of makes, you know, where I had to query this in the book. You read it. You know, where else could all this happen? I don't know. The trenches of the First World War. I doubt it's the Navy. I'm not fond of the sea. I'm an airman. I'm a pilot as well, and have been longer than Bruce, actually. I started learning to fly in 1982. By 86, I had instrument rating and single engine, got the lot. You know, and Steve back then, he never used to like flying originally. I think Bruce probably sorted that out. So it wouldn't be in the air. It wouldn't be over the trenches in the First World War. And then this dream came, you see. And I thought, good God, we must have fought the Zulu together in a previous life. How weird. So, you know, what can I say? Corporals Harris and Kay, that famous Edwardian vaudevillian act, Harris and Kay.
Let me here. I've got a couple more quick questions for you.
Okay? Sure. Go on.
This one's actually because we're talking about writing in a book. This is why this kind of blows me away, because growing up in Canada, a lot of this stuff wasn't on the radio, but we could actually read it from the UK, the British press, like Kerrang. So magazines like that, especially Kerrang and early Kerrang, let me stress, and Burn, like that's why Bravewords launched. So we would learn and read about all these things. At some point in time, we could actually find them in it was on the radio, right? We didn't have Radio Luxembourg in Lake Ontario, but you know what I mean? We would read it from the British press, and that was so important back then in the early 80s.
Well, see, you asked me earlier about what was going on with the pirate ships and the radio and everything. All right, look, basically, the BBC, as was the music industry at the time, at the top in the corridors of power, totally run by bowler-hatted, rolled-up umbrella jerks who may have helped win the war for us, but they were awfully, awfully old boy. And they were rather special in the military. And they knew how to run the music business. Only they didn't. And they were in command. They were the ones who ran the BBC, and they couldn't stand anything that wasn't classical music. You know, they thought that obviously what was happening was some sort of counterculture development, and they couldn't see it, they couldn't hear it. And in spite of the fact that the young people wanted it in their millions, they didn't care, because back then, young people did what they were told. They dressed like their parents, they spoke like their parents, they went to bed at 9 o'clock at night, and they listened to what their parents listened to. That's how society was in this country up until the revolution of the pop explosion, right through the 50s. There was no TV when I was young anyway. It hadn't been invented practically. Well, it'd been before the war on test, but then, there was nothing till 1955. We grew up in a radio society. We used to listen to, Comedy Hour and there weren't many radio stations for that. You had the home service, the light service, and you had the world service on long wave. That was it. One of them played classical music all day long. One of them just talked, and maybe you might have a bit of Mantovani, even Petula Clark. Fucking hell, watch it. So, I mean, blimey, don't go down that road, man. Ooh, no. That's deviant, that is. So this was how it was. And these were the guys, and even the ones that initially joined up to manage bands, the first bands, they were all accredited businessmen in bowler hats. They didn't have a fucking clue. And yet they held the whole of the population, the young population, a complete bloody prisoner, not allowed anything. And after the war, young people had money. They went to work, they earned money, they wanted their own fashion, they wanted their own life. Now, the pirate stations fulfilled a very important role. They did, because they initially were outside in international waters. Right. They couldn't be touched, and they were just so damn good. I used to listen to Radio London with Dave Cash and Kenny Everett. Dave Cash and Kenny Everett, the combo show. I mean, years later, with British journalist broadcaster Malcolm Dome, who was a great friend of mine, we did a combined radio show called the Rock and Roll Roundtable Circus. And on it, we had great guests like Ian Anderson came down, Magnum, and we did Mad Humour. And, we played the sounds, and I used to produce the show for us. And it was like the Kenny Cash combo show. And those pirate ships, they really were very important. There were millions of young people on these little new transistors that came out, listening to them under the bed covers at night. And Radio Luxembourg was very important too. But Luxembourg had been around since before the Second World War. That's nothing. They were the first. And at night, they were difficult to pick up. The atmospherics used to ruin their signal quite a lot. The pirate stations helped to move everything forwards. And eventually, when they brought the Marine Services Act in, and it was claimed that, it's interfering with the emergency services at sea. That's why they banned them in the end. You have to have seen The Boat That Rocked. That's a movie. If you haven't, Tim, see it. Okay. The Boat That Rocked. Oh man, it's fun. But it's all about that. And it's there. And that's how the BBC finally woke up to the fact that millions and millions of Brit kids were listening to this abhorrent form of noise called modern music.
Yeah, right.
And they were forced into creating Radio 1, which started out with Tony Blackburn. He was the first broadcaster. 1967, Radio 1. He was the first one. And of course, all the others followed very quickly. And it was very successful. But you're dealing with old attitudes.
Right.
And that's what held it all back. So that answers that. Before that, as I said, I was a youth club DJ. I don't know what the first thing I ever played was, but I was listening. I had vinyl in the 50s. Before that, I had 78s. You know, my mum and dad made sure that I knew about classical music. I was listening to Bizet's Carmen before I heard any pop music. You know, Prokofiev's Peter and the Wolf. I grew up on that. I know my music, and it's very deep. It's a real lifelong passion.
Yeah, can I just continue a little? You're born and you had 20 years. You was 20 years old before all heavy metal madness started. And actually, the persons who are in teenage days in the 20s and they love some music, they stay connected with this music for whole life. But you came forward. You didn't stop only of music. You started to listen. You catch and jump in the heavy metal train. So
Yeah,
how
I
this
know what you're
happened?
saying. Look, yeah, that's right, because I found that I was so heavily influenced and developed such a strong love of music that, you know, as time went by, it's been my life's work. I love good music. I don't like shit music, and I don't like imperfect music of any sort. But that's probably because of my background and that I'm an old man. However, I had to move forward. I mean, God Almighty, I was in West Berlin by the time I was 19 at the Playboy Club. I'd done 2 years in London clubs full time starting before I was even 18. You know, I mean, I had such a heavy grounding in music, and I actually love more than just metal. I have a wide span of music that I absolutely love, but it all helped me to understand, you know, good music, real, professional, well played, well written, well performed. And that goes back to my family as well. That's what I love. That's what I like. And it doesn't have to be heavy metal all the time, as long as it's well played. Hey, you know, my father introduced me to Glenn Miller, and I still listen to Miller today, not least of which because he was the man most important to our genre. But you won't believe how. Glenn Miller actually was the man who more or less invented the harmony structure for instruments. Most of the big band era bands all played on root notes. They had different sections, saxes, trumpets, and in Miller's case, used to lead with the clarinet, the licorice stick, as they called it. But Miller actually close harmonized his sections as well. And that's what helped to create this very rich melodic sound. And he was the first one. And these harmonies, the root third, fifth, and seventh sometimes, they're what all guitar players in our genre use all the time. And other instruments, they work for brass too. So Miller was really important. Wow. And he was the only one who was doing it in the 40s. You know, these things no one ever thinks about, but I'm always influenced by the greatness of some of these great people and what they can do. And I had to move forward. I found that the louder it was, the harder it was, the meaner it was, my spirit loved it more and more. And I mean, in the 60s, in the clubs, we had some great music. I went through Motown. We had real soul, Steve Cropper, the Blues Brothers, session men that were in the film. All these people were great. They really could play. And then something happened that kind of, in the early 70s, screwed me up completely because I just wouldn't go back and work there again. They had this thing called the Philly sound, and disco music was beginning to influence Clubland very, very much. The Philly sound was bands like the OJs. Well, they were tolerable, but I didn't like them. And then the nemesis, Barry White. Can't even say the word. Makes me sick. And when you've heard Barry White, you may as well give up and fucking well die, as far as I'm concerned. And that was it for me. I had to leave. I had to leave Clubland. There was no way that I was ever going to work with that shit. And I discovered that, you know, I already had John Mayall's Laurel Canyon album and a whole load of stuff. I believed in folk rock very much. The Laurel Canyon Troubadour story is great indeed. Woody Guthrie's son, Arlo Guthrie, very, very fine performer. You know, Steve Winwood with Traffic, even early Santana. I love all this stuff. And I was playing it too in the clubs. Mm-hmm. So I had to get out of there because I couldn't stand this syphilitic nonsense, which is what it is. It was shallow music for shallow people. And I don't like shallow people. Besides which, even back then I was riding motorcycles as well as, you know, everything else. And I am a biker. I was a president of a bike club for 2 years as well, which is in my book, and my club's in there. And I'm a man of, I love strength. I love directness. I love power, performance. Let's get it done. Let's stop fucking around and let's get it done under organization. Let's do it. I'm not interested in listening to anything else. I'm a bit difficult at times, Tim. You know, people around me.
No, I love this. I love this.
Well, that's who I am.
I love this. Let's wrap up in a couple of minutes, but I want to speak.
I've got all the time you want. I'll give you as much time as you want.
No, thank you. Maybe we could do part 2 because we want to keep the listeners involved.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
Speaking of going to battle,
listen, Tim, I'd like to invite your, watchers and listeners to, if we do part 2, then can we ask them to maybe come up with some questions that you can put to me through them?
Absolutely.
Can email you and or contact you direct. And let's get a few of them involved.
Oh, I've got a million questions, but there's no time for them all.
Well, yeah, I'll stay with you as long as you want me to. Nothing's a problem. One of the ironies of getting old or being old is the fact that once you stop doing things, you've got all the time in the world to do things.
Right.
yeah, that's true. Hey, wake up, Steph. Don't fall asleep on me, man.
No, well, that's why there's a question next for him. 1 or 2 left to go. Stjepan, please, speaking of going to battle, tell us about the whole Diano rollout, because it's been exciting to watch on YouTube, and you're right there.
So, what's happened with him? Actually, you want to know real truth? Paul Diano just finished the tour in South America. So from Mexico to Chile, we played 49 shows, believe it or not. And it was good. It was really good. You can find videos on YouTube. And now he played with KK in Wolverhampton. And if you see and if you read the reviews, all the reviews are really, really good. And he played in United Kingdom after 10 years or more, and people didn't know what to expect, because last time he played in the United Kingdom, it was very, very bad. It was like 30, 20, 30, 50 people in the audience, and it was horrible. And now it's much, much different, much, much better. And the tour in the UK this fall and Europe will be like 23, 24 shows altogether with Brazilian bands Nocturnal and the Electric Gypsies. And after that, Paul Diano will move in Australia to continue tour in Australia. And after that, again in South America and everything. But what I want to say, to all people who contributed with donations, with everything. Operation in Croatia, surgery, went well, really. He has a completely new bone in his leg, and it's long and big bone, like almost whole leg. And according to all doctors and all persons who work with him, Paul Diano can walk in 2 or 3 months. But now is following the most important and most difficult part, and this is a will to walk. Because I've done everything what I can do, and I tried to push at him and everything. And Paul wants to walk, but it is not easy after 8 or more years in a wheelchair to stand up. People have some. I read about that. People has something similar. Is not same, but similar with Stockholm syndrome. They are tied with a wheelchair. They are afraid to stand up and to face a real living or something like that. And I think me and doctors can do anything anymore for him. I mean, okay, physiotherapists can work with him, and it is not how Englishman says rocket science now. It's just work, strengthening muscles and everything. But Paul need to be now strong in his head, and only he can help himself now, not any doctors. And I really want to finish this in a good and positive way. And many things can come, many concerts, many albums and everything, but I telling this in public, and I telling this to him. Now it's up to him. Everything is up to him now.
Right.
I mean, I'd add to that really. Yeah, I know Paul. I know Paul like many others don't. And in actual fact, he has a real mountain to climb. When your own actions cause this sort of a problem, which is what happened, there's no denying that. You have to have the right state of mind to overcome these things. And of course, when you're sitting in a wheelchair and you're leading a metal band, it ain't ideal. For a start, when you want to develop real vocal power, you need to be upright in truth, rather than sitting down. And his own performance will improve drastically. And he must know that as well, obviously, if he gets out of the chair, which everyone wants him to do. But it is a very, very high Everest to conquer, actually. And as Stjepan says, if only he'd get out there, there's a huge world in front of him to go visit, while he's still got the age that he can. As you get older, as I've found out, really, as Stjepan well knows, that your own physical problems develop as you get older, and you're limited in the end to what you can and can't do. As much as you want to, my God, I love touring more than I love doing anything. I really did. I used to love going out and meeting the kids and stuff, and I loved the life. It wasn't easy and it weren't soft. It was hard, but I loved it. And with so many medical problems, 74 years old, I ain't exactly going to please insurance companies being out on the road. That's for fucking sure. They'll take one look at me and run the other way. Oh my God, it's Kay! Ah, and and Stjepan would love me to go touring. And the irony is, with this book out and what I've found out, it would be a great success. It would be. Hey, Stjepan, wouldn't it? It would be really good.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah. I mean, I had a lot of requests, and we saw a few days ago. No, it was 2 days ago in a cart and horses, and they asked me for many festivals and for everything. But yeah, just to conclude, what you ask me, everything is possible for Paul. I have a good, big plans,
Yes,
big
agreed.
ideas, everything, and many records will follow, many tours will follow, but I can do everything alone. I need help from the artist, like a person who help, like booking agent or friend of, you can call manager, or I'm not manager, but you can call as much as you want, and but I need, if you care about someone, you can care up to some border, up to some borders, and after that you just you can just stop, and if you don't have support from inside. So I trying to push him, to give him will for life, because it's really not easy, and I don't blame him about that. I mean, many people will, but I never been in a wheelchair, and I don't know how is the wheelchair, and it is I
It's a
believe it is
strange thing.
it is horrible, but yeah, many
I know
things
what you're saying.
come.
I have to use wheelchairs at airports. My hips are bad. I've already had one replacement, and it's heading down line for maybe another couple. And traveling around recently in the last 5 or 6 years at airports, I can't walk very far. I have to use a wheelchair. And when you're in a wheelchair, the aspect of life is completely different. Even at airports, people look at you in a completely different way. I mean, I'm me. I don't consider myself anything special. I did tell you that, Tim. And when you're in a wheelchair and people look down upon you, there's a shame. I don't want that shit. But I have to do the wheelchair thing because my legs just won't, let me walk where I need to go. And I understand it's a different sort of an aspect when you're there. And I understand fully. My God, Paul's got a hell of a future in front of him. If he wants it, it's there. It's so easy. He's got a legend. Not only was he in Maiden for 2 albums, but I mean, he's had the current band, one before it. People know about him and they want to see him. And Paul has got a duty of respect to himself and to the fans. I would put it this way, Paul, you have got to do this because you have to honor your fans. They want to see you worldwide. You cannot continue to tour worldwide in a wheelchair, not in a metal band. You need to be up on your pins. You need to front the band. You need to drive the fans to glory and beyond. And you can't do it sat in that fucking wheelchair. It's simple, son. You need to get up and make your mind accept the fact. And once you go there, you'll never ever use that damn chair again because you're still capable. You've still got the years, with you and for the future. And man, you're going to clean up. You don't even see that. You get out on the road and start doing a world tour, man. The sky's going to be the limit. That's how this whole thing needs to be approached. And I believe that Steve has spoken with Paul as well, Stjepan. I'm sure Steve has, had words with him and told him about all this as well. We have a duty of respect to all our fans. And once you become a name, which I flatly refuse to believe most of the time with me, but they say, I'm this, I'm that. Okay. We have to honor those people that have shown the respect to us and believe in us. That's the job. The job is not just to provide the music. That is the easy part. The actual job is to show the respect and the commonality of thought to the audience that pays the money for us at all times. We have a duty of respect. And that is the paramount thing in this game. It's never to ignore those people out front who put the money up, pay to see you in the best way that you can be. Not any old way, but the best way, the 100% way. And, you know, I just believe that Paul's going to see it anyway. He must know all this. I'm not telling or saying anything he doesn't know. He's still got strong spirit. He loves rock and roll. He's a very good front man, is Paul. He can be very funny too. You know, I know him very well from the bandwagon right the way up to concert level and down again. And he is a good front man. And while he's got the years in him, and he has, then if people want to see him and want to support the band, then his duty of care is totally to the audience, and that's why he's got to get out of the chair. Stjepan, maybe you need to tell him that. Give me his phone number. I'll bloody well tell him. If I get my hands on him, he's walking. You know?
Yeah. All right. Can we pause it there, guys? Do you mind? Let's
okay,
pause it there.
I was getting carried away there, but
part two can be the whole Q&A with fans and everything. And no, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. This is so awesome. Dream come true.
Well, that's not, I mean, you know, I always enjoy these socializing things that we do in the modern world with all this modern technology. Stjepan knows that I'm very gregarious. I love being with people, talking with people. The stage is where I always live, but I never, ever have had a problem speaking to the masses. Hell, even at Donington, there was 80,000 out front. I still had fun with them. It's in my family, Tim. It's what we do. I said to you.
Yeah. Before we finish this session, first part, I want to tell to Tim something. When I spoke with Neal about my book about Steve Harris, and he gave me an interview many years ago, like 10 years ago, I felt this fire in Neal, that this fire still burns. And I imagine in my head, okay, Neal is a legend, and now he's in the countryside of England, and he lived with all this memorabilia inside his house and with memories inside him, and it will be really shame to leave this legend and person to be forgotten or something. And after that, I saw after interview, after book was out, that this fire in Neal became the blaze, a big shining fire, and he was live again in this old way. And after that, big TV company contacted him, so big magazines, everything just started some good things started rolling around. And even I said to Neal, now it is now nothing. You need to go. You need to stand up and go from his home to London to meet the fans after Iron Maiden concert in Cart and Horses. And what's happened? Neal arrived in London. Neal meet the fans, and all of them waiting for him with tents of I don't know, metal for mutants, for
mothers, bell for mothers.
Yeah, or metal for mothers, or Stonehouse tapes and everything. And they was in the queue, and one of the girl ask him, am I right, Neil? Can I shake your head? Could you give me this honor to shake your hand? Some people from Japan arrived just to see Neil. One big Iron Maiden fan couldn't afford to get on the concert because not about money, but about time. But he take a flight from Spain just to be in the meet and greet with Neil and to speak with him. And this is what I wanted to say. If I want to get the chance to all these people to shine again, because they don't need to be forgotten and somewhere in the past. We all will die. I will die, Neil will die, you will die. But when Paul die, will Neil die, or any, I want to I want this person die in a glorious way, like a legend, not forgotten. So my some kind of, let's say, mission is to keep the legacy of these persons, and I don't want this person be forgotten, and this is my mission. I want to make this flame blaze brighter in their last days. So this is my idea.
All right.